All right, good morning. Thank you very much. So this has been an exciting event. Apprenticeship is something that is very, very close to my heart. I am a passionate evangelist for registered apprenticeship. And it's something that over 10 years at LNI, I have really watched the progress of registered apprenticeship really grow in the minds and awareness of the workforce community, the education community, and the employer community. Much of what has been discussed today are many, many different elements of moving forward into utilization of apprenticeship and really maximizing the potential of this model to transform workers' lives and employers' bottom lines for the betterment of our state's economy and worker welfare. So the cornerstone of apprenticeship is that at its essence, an apprenticeship is a job. It is not a college program. It is not a brief training. It is a job where an employer commits to making an employer commits to a worker that they will train them, and where a worker commits to the employer that they will learn, and both together they meet the need of the business. And it's that collaboration that is the successful core of an apprenticeship, and which has been the core of apprenticeship for centuries. Long before we had colleges, long before we were really even thinking about our economies, apprenticeship was the cornerstone of how workers learned to do those jobs that could only be learned through doing. So, the panel that we have today is a group of employers who have a rich perspective on what it takes to make apprenticeship work, what resources they need, how apprenticeship can help make them successful, and what are the challenges with apprenticeship. This perspective is very important to know because, as I said, the thing to remember is that apprenticeship is a job, and if the employer is not happy, nobody's happy. So when thinking about apprenticeship and how we encourage apprenticeship, how we grow apprenticeship, the employer perspective is fundamental, because if it's not working for them, it isn't working for anybody. So I thank you very much, panelists, for being here today. We're going to start with asking you, starting down there with Jay and then going over to Troy, if you could just intro yourself and talk about who you are, who you work for, and what your entity's interaction with apprenticeship is, and just briefly why it's important to your company. So, Jay.
Thank you. My name is Jay Schmidt. I'm the Executive Vice President and General Manager at Silicon Forest Electronics down in beautiful Vancouver, Washington. We do aerospace, defense, and electronics manufacturing, also in the unmanned systems area. And for us, it's important. Apprenticeship is important because, as some of you know, over 30% of the aerospace workforce is over the age of 55, and that includes those of us doing things in electronics. So our focus on how do we create that funnel and that pipeline to help keep our growth up is critical.
Good morning. My name is Stephanie Caldwell, and I'm with Apprenticeship Construction Company. We're located in Puyallup. We are builders, commercial builders, and I'm their small business community program manager, so I oversee all of our PLA community workforce agreements. Apprenticeship is actually signatory to the carpenters and laborers, so we rely on apprentices to help us finish our projects, not just in requirements from PLAs or CWAs, but also just in our private work as well, because we're a signatory. We deliver pre-construction, construction management, design-build services for multifamily housing, federal contracting, education, hospitality. We consider apprenticeships the way to go. They are approved apprenticeship programs are the way to go for building a diverse workforce.
Great, thank you. Troy.
My name is Troy Nutter. I manage operational training for Puget Sound Energy, which is one of the larger investor-owned utilities in the state of Washington. We've had a long history with apprenticeship since 1941 in our electrical side. We also have agreements with the UA plumbers, pipe fitters, steam fitters, and apprentices of Canada and America, or whatever their long title is. We call it the UA. We also have a journey worker training program for fitters and CFS techs as well. And that's a registered training program for veterans, but not a registered apprenticeship. So we have both models, and both have their pluses and minuses, but we still find that the on-the-job training is very good. We also are building other systematic training programs that will readily lend themselves to apprenticeship once we can put some of the pieces in place. But we also have an interest in the apprenticeship equity versus student debt issues out there, because a lot of our folks coming into the workforce don't want to incur student debt, so we are working on programs to articulate apprenticeship to AAS degrees and the BAS degrees. So it's been going very well.
Great, thank you very much. So the first question that we're going to start out with, and I'm going to be asking Stephanie to take the lead on this one, and then Troy, you can chime in, is to talk to us about what are the successes and what are the challenges from the perspective of your company related to doing registered apprenticeship. Stephanie.
Okay, great. So, like many have said yesterday and today, that we're facing an aging workforce. A lot of baby boomers are wanting to, not maybe today or tomorrow, but a few years out retire, and so we're seeing a lot of our superintendents that are seasoned needing to be replaced, and it's not the time to replace them after they leave. We need to find those replacements now. And so how do you better do that is through training and mentoring apprentices. So Apprenticeship is hugely supportive of pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs across the state. We rely on those programs to help us find workforce. Some of the challenges that we see, and I was kind of taking some notes, adding to my notes for today, I see it two sides. So first is internal, so working with, I guess it's the good old boy system, because there's not a lot of people who look like me when I started, and how do we recognize that and have a zero tolerance of allowing inclusion on our job sites, working with our older superintendents and just our staff in general, having them to understand that, you know, inclusion is important. Yes, you want to build this building, but in order to get this building, you have to have certain components and adopt it into your program, and when going out and bidding that job or interviewing for that job, and a part of that is inclusion. So how do you do that? How do you get, although you're signatory to a trade, how do you as a company make sure that where you're working is reflective of the community that you're working in? So Apprenticeship has a zero tolerance to any type of discrimination or EEO policy. We have an EEO officer. While many companies have that, we have a strict policy that it's not just a person being victimized. If you see something, if I see something, I'm able to freely go and report that, whatever that incident is, and help the HR director report it to her, and she will go out and investigate that situation. So the challenge is on the internal side is to making sure all of our workers, from executive level down to the accountant working in the office, they understand that inclusion is important, that we have zero tolerance, and this is what we're going to look like. The second challenge that we see is, while pre-apprenticeship programs and apprenticeship programs are great, we're still seeing some challenges with, like, a valid Washington driver's license, reliable transportation. I know that the panel before talked about all of that. Simple things about childcare. Soft skills, calling in if you're not going to be there. We can't build a building if you're not going to be there. If you're going to be late, call your superintendent. Stay in touch with your supervisors. Pre-apprenticeship programs could help us incorporate more soft skills to teach people that aren't familiar with the trades, those types of things. We have an example of one. woman we hired as a new apprentice is a single mom, African-American woman with 3 children. As soon as she started to work, her rent was raised. We're like, why is that? Apprenticeships don't start at 100%. So we helped her contact the authority, the housing authority that she was working with, or housing with, to get her rent back down to where it was until she was able to afford an actual full rent scale. So some of those things are challenging because why would you want to come to work as an apprentice, as a single mom, and you can't afford to take care of your family or pay your rent? So some of those things as contractors, that's why they have me, to work through those situations and challenges with our apprentices.
Well, I'd like to add to some of the challenges. You talk about attracting diverse employees. Alan Hardcastle and I wrote an article several years ago for the Western Energy Institute about the social challenges facing apprenticeships applying. Electrical has a fairly high standard because you do need math, you do need algebra, you do need critical thinking, and 47%, if I remember right, was the number that didn't even make it through the basic screening because they didn't have that kind of education. How do we move some of those pre-requirements down into the K-12 system? So we're looking at doing a foundational skill panel to look at, we have all these ones that are great for all our occupations, but what does it take to be entry level at all those occupations? What can we move down into K-12? So I was really happy to hear Chris Reichel saying, we need to move this down. So I pulled Bob Gunther aside and said, Bob, let's find some money. So we're going to work on moving that forward. The other piece that we find that's challenging is what you were describing. I work on the United Way board as well, and they call it ALICE, which is Asset Limited, Income Constrained Employed. There are those people that are above the poverty level, but struggling to make it every day and every week until their paycheck gets there. How do we make apprenticeship affordable for them? How do we make it so that we can help those people get into the programs or get the basic education they need, to move forward? So that's a challenge that all of us have to support in our communities, and I think most of the employers and union groups give to United Way in those kinds of programs as well. But there's so many needs out there for that group of people because when I started out, it was like $6 an hour as an apprentice. Today, if you started at $6 an hour, you'd be going backwards. Yeah. So how do we help those folks get on a career track that they can make a family wage, yet still meet the needs while they're going through the training part of the program, both pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship. So that's a challenge out there.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. Jay, did you want to add anything?
The only thing I would add is that being in manufacturing, there's a challenge that we face constantly is the negative stigma of manufacturing, that because of what students have been told by their parents or what they've read on the internet, that there is no manufacturing and it's all going to another country, and why would you ever get into manufacturing? Yet, when we look at the opportunities that are out there, there's great opportunity. So we have that challenge with trying to attract enough youth or enough young apprentices to come into programs through our community partners. And in a moment I'll talk about how we try to get over that, but that's a big challenge is the stigma.
Great, thanks. Troy, just one thing I wanted to add related to one of the elements that you said. I don't know if it's been replicated or looked at recently, but a number of years back, we were talking about what math skills would a high schooler need to have in order to go directly into a registered apprenticeship, and it kind of speaks to some of the articulation and direct entry elements that you, sir, were talking about earlier. Yep. Because I think a lot of people think, apprenticeship, I'll just go do that. If I can't go to college, I'll go to an apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. We brought in some of the training directors, and we brought in electrical, sheet metal, plumbing, and I think one more, I don't recall. And we brought in the people from OSPI who at that point were overseeing some of the standardized tests that our high schoolers at that point were doing. They still do standardized tests. The letters have changed. and looked at the level of math that was required to get the different levels of the standardized test. And at that point, a student needed to get the highest score on the math standardized test and go beyond that in order to just test into successfully the basic level for an electrician apprenticeship.
That's true, but the challenge there is the high schools and K-12 system don't put any math in context. University of Minnesota did a study, and they had one high school where they did the traditional academic math. They took a light high school and did a contextualized where they trained the applied science teachers and the academic teachers together, and they put that math in context of, for me, trigonometry, I understood course over ground and speed over ground from sailing better than I did, all the drawings on the board that my eyes kind of glazed over. The test results the following year, they had a 50% increase in math scores in the school that had contextualized math versus the academic, which was staying steady.
Yeah, so I think, if you hear the talk about apprenticeship and you hear talk about STEM and then trying to think, well, what's the connection? That is the connection, because for many apprenticeships, whether they be in the building trades or in manufacturing or in other areas, you have to take a lot of those foundational and basic skills in math and communication and language and be able to put those to work both in the workplace context and in the academic context that is required for success in an apprenticeship. Just to let you guys know, so electrician looked at probably about first or second year college math level in terms of the ability to know it and use it while, by the way, your life is at stake from high voltage exposure. Plumber and sheet metal were like junior level or like the next level down from the highest level of electrician for math level. And again, that was a number of years back, but I think that gave some understanding and context about just the pure skills that were needed to get into these amazing career opportunities. So one of the next questions I want to ask you as employers are relating to when you're doing registered apprenticeship. Many of the folks here in the audience represent community partners, community resources. And what are some of the community resources that you find helpful in working through and having a successful registered apprenticeship program? And so this one I'm going to ask Jay, you to take the lead on, and then Stephanie, and then if you wish, Troy, you can add on to that. So Jay, talk to us about that.
In our region, probably the most dominant group that we work with is called Workforce Southwest Washington, and they do a great job of helping us to navigate as a small business all the different connecting points where we can formalize apprenticeships. But in addition to that, there are other organizations and other resources that may be not so traditional. One organization that we work with is a group called Gateway to College, that I'm an ambassador of that organization. And that where Patrick talked earlier about incarcerated folks or folks coming out of prison, Gateway to College works with at-risk or opportunity youth in trying to help them get back into a GED program after dropping out of high school. So we've created our own apprenticeship program through Gateway to College, that if a kid has dropped out of high school and worked their way back into the Gateway to College program and they've completed 1 year, we want to give them a job. And that's completely changed their identity. So those are a couple of examples of the resources we work with.
Some of the resources that we work with are like Workforce Central, Rest Care. We do a lot of work with programs like PACE, ANEW. We've contacted them and have worked with them years in the past. We think that working with the pre-apprenticeship programs, it helps us for those resources to help us meet our preferred entry goals. A lot of the projects with community workforce agreements and project labor agreements, there's a preferred entry or direct entry hire. Oftentimes in an apprenticeship program, we aren't going to find those demographics of folks that we're looking for. So working with pre-apprenticeship programs like ANEW, PACE, or even the Tool Center help us to find those demographics. One of our projects with Tacoma Housing Authority 3 years ago, before the Tool Center started, we worked with Workforce Central to have a pilot program on site, a pre-apprenticeship program where they had and training, in classroom training on soft skills, and then they were able to come out to the site and have hands-on training. And from that 6-week course, we were able to generate a list for our contractors to hire from to help us meet our preferred entry goals. So some of those type of partnerships help us meet our goals.
Great, thanks.
So one thing not to overlook is the Centers of Excellence for your occupational sector. If you look around the room, who's here? We have community-based organizations, we have employers, we have government, we have education, and apprenticeship programs. The Centers of Excellence are a big piece for us because we cover such a broad geographical area for our company. If I had to try and make connections with each one all in individual places, I wouldn't have time to do my day job. Don't overlook the power of the centers because they have a broad reach across the state, and they have connections with most of all the different agencies, and if they don't, so their partner colleges do. So, I mean, it's a great system, and so I have to kind of plug this whole day that we're spending here today about this. That was a paid political ad. I'll send the bill to you later.
Right.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm going to ask a follow-on question for that, and then I'll start down with Jay and then go this way again. What could you use more of in terms of community resources? What support or resources do you wish you had more of, or that you would like to see?
As a small business, sometimes it gets mind-numbing to navigate all the different support agencies, and everybody's trying really hard, but as a small business, we don't have the resource to be able to navigate all of it. I know that yesterday there was a governor's summit on career-connected learning, and one of the things that I took out of that was cross-agency collaboration, and I think that would help small businesses like ours be able to navigate all of the resources better.
I think for Apprenticeship and building industry in general is helping us to connect better with the high school and the graduates before they even get out of high school. I heard Mark Martinez recently talk, and he said, when you talk about construction, it sometimes isn't sexy for kids. It's not like, wow. Mm-hmm. But why not rebrand it and make it that way? And it should be, a lot of our superintendents who came from the field are now working in the office in management, executive management positions. So it can be a great opportunity for high school students. So how do we bridge that gap and get industry more involved in high school, junior high level, where it's not an alternative to college, but it is a first option versus an alternative. And I think just needing to continue that outreach to the communities where they aren't aware of apprenticeship programs and how to navigate through those programs is helpful.
So for me, I think the biggest area that the state collaboratively can work on is telling the story of apprenticeship equity versus the student debt. We heard yesterday from Dr. Taylor that this new next generation is very critical and distrusting of the colleges because they see so many college graduates unemployed or working at McDonald's or other places. Yet they see the people that have gone through apprenticeship out there in $70,000, $80,000, $100,000 jobs, and they're looking at that equity piece. We need to get that message out to parents because they also say that parents are one of the big influences in kids' choices. They're bringing their parents to job interviews. They actually have had parents drive them to the apprenticeship test and want to sit in, and we have to politely tell them no. They need to take the test on their own. But it's really a story to tell because, my son started in college. I just paid off his first 3 years of college debt, but he has paid off all his student loans now because he went into the apprenticeship program and is now a journeyman electrician. So it's really important to get that message out there because it is an opportunity, and I'll tell you and I don't say this in a derogatory way, the middle skills jobs are the backbone of our economy, and we need to move those forward. I don't look at them as any apprentice or person that comes as a middle skilled person, but it's just that continuum of level of education. But apprenticeship and the tactical trades keep this economy running.
So I have a question, and I don't know if any of you can answer it. It might just be a hypothetical question. But related to that point about telling the apprenticeship story and the story of apprenticeship equity versus college debt, speaking from the point of view of somebody whose job it is to promote apprenticeship, how do I tell that story without making all of my college friends mad?
Well, you're going to make them jealous is what you're going to make them.
Because I want to be collaborative.
Yeah, I think the collaborative piece is, some people are blessed and have the ability to pay for college and not take on debt. Others take on the debt knowing that their occupation's there. But in the 90s, when the federal government cut vocational education or shop class, we did our society a real disservice because we have a whole generation of people that have trouble putting the shovel in the ground. And, I think from the sounds of Dr. Taylor, we're moving back to people that want to be more self-sufficient, self-sustained, want a simple life and live simply, and I think it's going to resonate, the message out there. And I think even some of the college people are looking at the amount of debt they're carrying when they come in is just crushing them.
Okay.
I love the comment, apprenticeship is the new college without the debt.
Yeah. I have stacks and stacks of pencils in my office that say apprenticeship, the original 4-year degree. Many of you have used those pencils and hand them out at your events. But I think, the point is there, and one of the things with the Career Connected Learning Summit that you mentioned, Jay, is that there is just as there are a spectrum of jobs and there are a spectrum of employers, there is a spectrum of training opportunities. And it's not that one is better than the other. It's just like, for every job, there's a tool that works for that job. There's training programs that work for certain jobs and sometimes it's apprenticeship and sometimes it's college. And the thing is creating awareness around the spectrum and creating pathways and clear articulations so that people can see the options and can get to them. And the employers from the other side can see their options and how they can get to their training opportunities for their workers is the optimized environment that I think that we're seeking. And the equity versus debt equation is an important component in that for informed consumers, whether they be potential apprentices or potential employers, to understand. So the next question sort of segues off of that, which, that's one opportunity. The telling the better story of apprenticeship is, I think, an important opportunity. From your perspective as an employer looking at the registered apprenticeship system, where are there opportunities? Where are there opportunities for the system? Where are there opportunities for employers that could or should be capitalized on? And for this one, I'm going to start with Troy and then move back this way.
So for me, I think the biggest opportunity we have in apprenticeship is not only the technical skills, but also the leaders of the future in our industries, because they have good, solid work skills. We then need to articulate, and we've been successful in articulating to Associate of Arts degrees, apprenticeship plus 5 to 10 classes, which can be online or in person or hybrid, is getting people to that basic AAS degree. And they're now developing in the community technical college the Bachelor of Applied Science degrees in operations management, in project management, in engineering technology. So people have a pathway to college and to degrees to advance themselves. And the nice thing is, our company and many others offer tuition reimbursement, so again, we're reducing the cost of that overall education. We're also finding that those that go through apprenticeship prior to going to college are much more successful at college because they know what they're looking for, they know what they need, and they're getting more value out of that further education. I remember when I went to Western Washington State College, so I'm dating myself, I didn't know what I wanted to do. But after I got out and went through the first apprenticeship and decided that wasn't right, I went slow learner. I went to a second apprenticeship as an electrician. Wonderful things. And that practical skill, as I go back and obtain additional degrees in leadership, in the project management and operations management, fantastic opportunities, and the company's paying me to work and go to school and keep expanding and developing. And I think that's something that we really need to build upon, because the challenge we have is getting leaders from the field that have field knowledge to move into leadership roles at the foreman level, at the supervisor level, at the management level. Our company used to be probably 50-50 college leadership versus from the field leadership. We're probably now 5% field leadership to college leadership. And it's nothing against college, because I've done both sides, but you have to keep building your toolbox, and the practical application is so important in many regards. So I think that's the biggest opportunity we have, is to build that and use apprenticeship as a springboard to lifelong learning.
Great, thank you.
One of the first things I learned when I started in construction 19 years ago was that you work your way out of a job. So you have to have a job in order to be an apprentice. That's the perspective that we've come from on industry-wise. Appsher currently has a project with Sound Transit, and it is $170 million over the course of the next 5 years or so. So we are going to be looking for apprentices, not just with Appsher, but all of our trades. So it's about employment and having jobs to go to. So as long as we are having jobs or buildings to build, we'll always have opportunities for apprentices.
I come from the aerospace, defense, and unmanned systems world, and those markets are all growing and booming. And I think for me, it kind of starts with that bedrock again of the opportunity is getting rid of the misconceptions of manufacturing. And as you mentioned, the awareness around the spectrum I think is a great comment. And so how do we create that awareness around the spectrum? I think another opportunity is the idea of externships, where we're taking high school teachers and letting them work in real businesses and experience what it's like, and because they're going to be the window of opportunity, or be able to explain to those youth coming through what it's really like, and not what they've read, or not just base it on what their parents have seen as well. And then in addition to that, the whole idea of visual learning. As a business, we spend a lot of time in the schools. We love to go to middle schools, we go to high schools, we take circuit board assemblies, we show videos of unmanned systems flying. We let the kids hold the product so that they can actually touch it, and then explain what it does, and show that this thing that you're holding in your hand helps pilot a large aircraft with 250 people on it. So that visual and experiential learning is something that we can take as an employer back into the school system as an opportunity. And I think a lot more employers can do that and reach out to the education system.
Great, thank you so much. So the next thing I'm going to do is I have one more question, and then I'm going to start to take some questions from you all. The question I want to ask for you right now is, and we're going to start with Stephanie and then go to Troy and then over to Jay. I'm mixing it up. Is thinking about, for employers, the bottom line is the bottom line. The return on investment is the reason why they make choices. It's the survival of their company. And so everything that an employer does, for the most part, needs to have a return on investment for that company, whether in the short term or the long term. And so talk to us about what is the ROI for your company in participating in registered apprenticeship?
So ours is pretty simple. I have three things. We're filling the gap of aging workforce. Like I said, a lot of our superintendents are seasoned workers who are experienced or aging out, and we need to fill that gap. So apprenticeships are a way and opportunity to fill that gap. We get skilled workers. We're looking for gifted, talented people to build the building. It takes gifted and talent, have a gift and talent to build this building, at least I think so. And to diversify our workforce. We should be looking like where we're building. We shouldn't, we need to be more inclusive, and it's an opportunity for Appsher to be inclusive, not just in the crafts, but for all of our positions within Appsher. And apprenticeships is a way for us to do that.
Great.
So for me, apprenticeship ROI, we have jobs that you can buy the skills. There's lots of IT people out there, there's lots of accountants, but there are a lot of jobs for us that you don't have a ready pool of skills that you can buy, so you have to grow them within. So apprenticeship for a utility is those specialized things in our substations and our hydro projects and things that are not common apprenticeships. We have to build those skills, and we have to work with our community college partners to prep people for it. We also work with them on related supplemental instruction. But you just can't grow jobs, especially in our transmission and system operations control. Situational awareness is a key part of it. You have to understand the theory, the field operations, and the real-time impacts of power. You know, when you have a major windstorm, it gets pretty exciting in our control centers, you know, and then all the work that follows after that. We really look to veterans coming back because they understand mission, they understand structure and those kind of things. So we have a really robust Veterans Connection program as well, and also we encourage people to be in the Guard and things like that. But for us, the ROI is we have long-term employees as a result of apprenticeship because they know the company is willing to invest in them and the future and their future. And again, from apprenticeship into the AAS, the BAS degrees. So you tend to build up a loyalty there. I know they talked yesterday that they don't have any loyalty to the companies. Depends on how you approach it. If you invest in them and give them opportunity, they tend to be fairly loyal to you and or their craft and move things forward. So that's our ROI.
Yeah, thanks. Jay?
We have historically used temporary agencies to try to find our next generation of workforce, and that can be really expensive. So for us, to the extent that we can use our community partners and establish more formalized pipelines of apprenticeship and experiences, that cost is a direct benefit from not having to use an agency which may charge you a lot. And I think the type of people that we get through apprenticeship, it's a more natural, organic process where we're creating a tipping point for a person as they move through their career, and to that extent, maybe they will stay with us longer.
Great. I think there's a couple of things relating to that. One, one of my favorite little lines to throw out is people say, "What if I train them and they leave?" And then, of course, the response is, "What if you don't train them and they stay?" The other thing is, I think that is just this thought that I think human beings just have a natural instinct to be reciprocal. And that's why the March of Dimes sends you sticky address labels when they want you to send them in return a check for $25. It's because when you get something, you have this impulse to give something back. And I think apprenticeship capitalizes on that, because when somebody is at an employer, when you work for somebody and they train you and they share their secrets and they give you a pathway to a better life and a better career, and they help you move forward in your life, most workers want to give back. They want to stay. They want to return the investment. And that's something that there's been studies in Canada where they did ROI studies in Canada for employers, and they found that in many different industries, and they adjusted for American dollars, for every dollar that employers invested in training apprentices, they got back $1.47 to $1.68 in return on investment over 2 to 5 years. And in most cases, the apprentices stayed with the company because they did want to return the investment. And that's the thing where in apprenticeship, because you are helping them through a skilled, structured training program where they are getting a credential, you are giving them something that's truly of value, and you are investing in the future of your company and in future leadership for your company. So.
Yeah, employee turnover costs between $13,000 and $18,000 for every employee that turns over. So you're saving real money.
Right. So one of the things in the apprenticeship world that, when we look for where's an industry, where's an employer that could be potentially ripe for that apprenticeship conversation, we look for the smell of desperation. So whenever an industry or a company cannot find the workers that they need, when those workers are not just walking in off the street to say, I want to apply for your job, when they have a mission critical job that they need people to be trained for, and when that job is so complex that you can't just put anybody in that position, that's when you start having the conversation of, could it be the right time to invest in an apprenticeship, to train them yourself, to build this training program in your industry? And so just for labor and industries, about 10, 15 years ago, we reached that point with our claims managers. Nobody else, it's hard, it's a very hard job. You're dealing with, distraught injured workers, angry lawyers, people who want their check yesterday, 300 cases on very medically complex cases, and with providers who say, I sent you that record a week ago, why can't you find it? So we actually started investing as a state agency in building a claims manager apprenticeship program. It's a 22-month apprenticeship program. And we bring in about, 50 to 100 apprentices per year and train them up to be our claims professionals. And that now is one of the industry credentials that is most respected in the insurance adjusting industry, because nobody else is doing it. And that is how we have built a workforce. And people can come in from office support or customer service jobs and then work their way up to a very well-paid state job through the 22-month apprenticeship. So I'll say, if you are in an industry where you have a critical workforce need, whether you're a public sector or private sector employer, if you're seeing a critical gap where you're saying we just can't fill those positions, it may be time for you or for that partner to start looking at how you build it yourself. And we're going to be talking a little bit more about that related to cybersecurity in the afternoon panel. But if you are at that point where you say, how could we possibly fill these slots? Nobody's coming to apply for these. The next step may be thinking about training yourself through an apprenticeship. So with that, I'm going to go to what are your questions for our panelists here? In the back.
Oh, I have the mic.
Oh, you, okay. Cecile.
Is this on? Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. So my heart and soul, this is a question for Stephanie, is in equity and apprenticeship. So I'm a line worker, lineman, and the numbers for that trade for particularly women, I can't speak to the other ethnic numbers, but they're abysmal. They're abysmal. And so I wanted to talk to you about this idea of public executions, which they're funny. It's great to take a disciplinary action when you're talking about stopping that or changing the culture. But the first day on my job at a utility as an apprentice, I walked out after signing all my we don't harass paperwork and all that fancy stuff. And I'm going to tailor the language a little bit, temper it, but it's like, okay, you little pansy, nobody's here to effing hold your hand right now, and this is the way it's going to be. And by the way, what happens out here stays out here. And that's pretty much reinforced over and over again. And when you're a person, and I love the phrase that you use, when you're a person and not many people look like me, you want to have a job, you want to have a paycheck. And so, I think we have to, and I'm curious how you handle that, because there's a maturity beyond the discipline. The discipline absolutely needs to be there. I don't disagree with that at all. But there's something else beyond hanging people for the big offenses that get noticed or turned in. How do you deal with the cultural change, the smaller things that happen, the micro aggressions that happen that are still just as damaging and that keep those numbers low?
Again, I guess it's first having an open environment where it's easily reported and having those conversations on site. Training our superintendents that if someone comes to your door, say this is happening, or if they can't go to the superintendent, go to the foreman, having those conversations and not being afraid to have them. So I have discussions all the time in the office about different things that happen or conversations that happen, and just being able to talk about them out front without having a fear that you're going to get punished, or you're tattletelling, or you're getting someone in trouble. Just having those open conversations. And it's always been a policy of APSHR, having, even from top down, those open conversations about the smallest of things that have happened. Because you don't know, in that smallest of thing might be a bigger picture that we're not aware of. It's better to find out now than versus later when it becomes a big claim.
Next question.
Yes, I want to thank you all for being employers and hiring people. I appreciate that. I want to give you a context. When I got out of the Marine Corps in 1970, the only people that would hire me was the construction industry. And they had a thing called veterans preference, which most veterans found out are not true. It's veterans retention is what we're interested in. And I would like to ask you what your definition is of veterans preference and retention, and how do you live that definition?
That's a good question. Can you start? So I guess I'll start. So, and I hate to say it this way, but a lot of our federal jobs, because we do a lot of federal work, there is a veterans preference on jobs like that and other jobs. And we just make sure that, I guess not in categorizing people, but just making sure we are giving opportunities for all groups. And I don't know the numbers of veterans that we've hired to date, but I do know that we have hired veterans with Apprenticeship. And retainage is important for us regardless of the group that you come from, because we're looking to keep people, to mentor people, to train them up so that they can replace the seasoned out people. Does that answer your question, or kind of answer it?
So from my perspective, while our program doesn't have direct veterans preference, I find that veterans rise to the top based on their merits, because they have sets of skills and critical thinking and other aspects in the workplace that we're looking for. We've also been recognized as a guard-friendly, military-friendly organization in the state because we have really good support of reservists, National Guard, and people that go on active duty. We've had some people that have been deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, and other places, and groups within the company put together care packages and send cookies and all that stuff. I mean, and they really are supportive of it. We also have recognition programs. We encourage veterans to apply for our company, and they generally rise to the top. And, I like them personally because they understand mission, they understand situational awareness, they understand the needs of employers, and you can rely on them to be where they say they're going to be when they're going to be there. I don't know what else to say, but go Vets.
And in our organization, I'm the vice chair of the Pacific Northwest Defense Coalition, and one of the things that we do is we get out there, and instead of being passive about trying to employ vets, we go to the job fairs, we go to employer summits, and we try to have our presence out there, back to that comment about awareness around the spectrum. We want to be very inclusive with our veterans in terms of the job opportunities that we have, and it can't be just us putting job ads out there. We have to be out there in the public.
Great. Thank you. Next question.
Is there discussion of maybe making it a cooperative degree, like your onboarding in the apprenticeship program actually translate directly to college classes that will work? I guess the apprenticeship side is probably more correlation, but more of the organizational onboarding and training that you guys maintain, perhaps maybe making it a cooperative with a local JC or a four-year school to make it more of a tangible, credited course, and they get credit for that as they progress and want to stay with an employee for your organization or company.
Our program actually has articulated degrees with 5 additional credits if they have a minimum 6,000 hour apprenticeship with the 5 basic, I think it's English, math and society, psychology in the workplace, and a couple other core curriculum classes that are required for AS degrees. which they can take online during their 4-year or 5-year apprenticeship. They can come out of their apprenticeship with an AAS degree, which we have then articulated with colleges into the other bachelor programs I spoke about earlier. I think that's out there. The colleges are very open. I know Centralia does it. South does it. Renton, a bunch of them do it, and Bellingham's kicking off that program now. So it's moving and growing, and I think it's a great program.
Right, yeah. Alan?
What are you hearing from your employer colleagues, other employers that you work with regularly, about the reasons why, even if they are set up to do apprenticeship, they're not doing apprenticeship?
Right.
What are you hearing from them? You're great examples of employers that do. Why do others not?
I know that in our world, I get to talk to like the machining companies and folks that need, advanced manufacturing technicians, and I have this theory that we need to, instead of being passive about it, I don't think they're treating it like they would business development. In other words, if you had to go out and get new sales, if you flip that in the other direction, you have to do it in the other direction, and I don't think that they have the maybe not the vision of doing that. And just saying, well, I'm sure people are going to be out there, and if they're available, I'm going to hire them. But I think it's got to be a business development activity, which is a complete mindset shift.
And I think one other piece is we need to, especially for small business, streamline the process in the administrative burden. I have a full-time person, because we're a larger company, that just manages the apprenticeship program, the data collection, the data reporting, and all those kind of things. Fortunately, we've been at it a long time, and it's pretty well established, but a lot of the new occupations, it takes time to put together apprenticeship standards, and there needs to be a way to help them develop their occupational standards, because you cannot have an apprenticeable occupation unless you can identify what the occupation is, the skills required, the education required. A lot of the small companies don't have the infrastructure or the financial capacity to do that. So somehow we have to figure out, do we have an organization or someone that will take on that role? And I don't know if that's L&I, and I don't know if that's the colleges or something, but we need to figure out how we can better help some of these non-traditional folks move to apprenticeship with their limited infrastructure and financial resources.
Right.
Since Apture, again, we're signatory to the carpenters and laborers, a lot of the subcontractors that we work with are union companies, and they have access to apprenticeship programs, and we rely on our subcontractors to help us meet our goals. Sometimes we do have bidders who are non-union, and it's quite difficult for them to hire apprentices because they don't have a training facility, or they're not a training facility, state-approved training facility to hire apprentices. So sometimes we get pushback from them in that respect, and oftentimes we'll offer a one-time maybe for them to have access to apprentices. So it's a little conversation that we'll have in the process of signing that contract with them to figure out how we can best get them to understand why we think apprentices, our utilization is important, and if we can't get to the table with that, we might have them talk to someone who represents an apprenticeship program.
All right, we have time for one more question.
Jesse Cody with the Machinist Union. I also sit on AJAC, Aerospace Joint Apprenticeship Committee. We have 220 participating employers across the state. There's 1,350 aerospace companies. It represents about 11% of all payrolls in Washington State, just aerospace, not including advanced manufacturing that goes outside of aerospace. The difficulty that I have is because I get my salary from the Machinist Union. When I go talk to these employers, they're scared to death of Jesse. They think that I'm going to go in there and I'm going to unionize the facility. My concern is the reason we started AJAC in the first place, it's a huge cluster here in Washington State. It's the third largest cluster of aerospace workers in the world. In the world. It represents 11% of all our payrolls in Washington State. It's $70 billion worth of trade in our state. The reason we created AJAC is because our age of our workforce and aerospace manufacturing is 55 years old. Those folks are leaving. They're taking the knowledge with them. If we do not train up our young folks to take those jobs, then those jobs go someplace else. Bottom line. And I've got a lot of pushback for putting that program together, but we're very successful. We're producing a great outcome. But my challenge is going out to the rest of those 1,100 employers out there in Washington State saying, hey, if you're treating your employees well, if you're paying them a living wage, we're still going to train them. And you don't have to worry about Jesse coming and knocking on your door, right? So what we've done is we've taken local politicians like mayors and the such, and we've pulled these employers together to say, hey, we have a proven track record of having a great end result after these apprenticeship programs are done, and we're creating that next generation of aerospace workers here. So what I need from you, Jay, is to be an ambassador out there with those employers saying, hey, the same ambassador job that I do, out there talking to the employers, we can train the workforce together if we have that collaborative relationship. So what the question is, she's an expert as well as I am, but the question is, how do we get more employers involved in apprenticeship in advanced manufacturing specifically?
I think that's a great role for the Center of Excellence for the aerospace industry, because in the electrical sector, we found that pulling all the people to a neutral kind of location where you have labor, industry, education, in the state all in one place, you can have those kinds of common dialogues and common things, and it's been very successful for the Center of Excellence for Energy, because we've been able to get a lot of training grants and a lot of things like that. And I know there's a lot of support from the Center of Excellence so I'm not trying to be trite because you work with them very closely, but it's just encouraging other employers that are non-participating, is getting them in the conversation, getting them in the dialogue, and that's a hard job. So Mary Kay does a great job of it. She can talk, and she can wear them down.
And I think through, organizations like this, and then the, Pacific Northwest Aerospace Alliance and Pacific Northwest Defense Coalition, those tipping point places where we can get an audience together like this, and you and I can have that discussion with a larger group and create some tipping points would be good.
Absolutely.
Great. So one of the things I would ask for, to tag on to what Jay said, if any of you can think of organizations where there is a group of employers who would be ready to hear, need to hear the message about the return on investment for registered apprenticeship, why it makes sense for them to create a program to train their own skilled workers, the workers that they need for their bottom line. I would ask you to, at the very least, let me know about it. Evan, could you raise your hand back there? He's one of our local L&I apprenticeship consultants. We have a staff statewide. We would be ready, willing, happy, and jump at the opportunity to go talk about registered apprenticeship and how they could start today with building their program or getting associated with an existing program like AJAC to help get those employers involved and interested in training their workers through a registered apprenticeship. Because it's great to talk about it, but what matters is action. And what matters is actually starting those programs and getting those employers involved, because at its core, an apprenticeship is a job. And if there is no employer, there is no job, and there is no apprenticeship. So thank you very much for being employers, supporting apprenticeship, and for your participation in the panel today. Great job.
Thank you.